children and my family are the most important thing in my life. And as I say that out loud, I think to myself, I imagine most men would nod their head in agreement to that statement. But how many men truly live that out and live in alignment with that value? I think it's a nice thing to say. It's probably another thing to live. And I saw that real gap that as a culture, we're not ushering men through that transition. And actually, in general, as a culture, we don't elevate fathers and we don't raise good fathers as a culture.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Jason Seeman, is a father, facilitator, and founder working at the intersection of education, community, and personal transformation. He leads two powerful initiatives. Firstly, through the Rites of Passage Institute, Jason helps schools across Australia design and deliver transformational programs that guide young people through life's critical transitions. Secondly, through Raising Fathers, Jason turns his attention to one of the most important and underserved transitions, becoming a dad. This project helps men step into fatherhood with intention, confidence, and presence. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Mate, it's pretty big what you're doing. And when I've listened to you on a few podcasts, and we're going to go a different direction to the other podcasts I've heard, because in those you've been interviewed, the ones I've heard anyway, you've been interviewed by ladies and it's all about having babies. And I've loved what I've heard, but we'll move down a different track today because typically my audience are men. And it's not that anything that's said there was not what we want to hear, but we'll just move over to the men's side of things. And the rites of passage, that's where I first came across you. And then since I've found out you're doing the Raising Fathers. So let's start with rites of passage. What's that all about? How did you get involved? Let's hear it.
Great. Great. Well, I mean, as a starting point, I think it's worth defining what a rite of passage is, because it's a word I think that's a little bit overused and understood. Misunderstood is probably the right word there. So a rite of passage, the word rite is R-I-T-E, not R-I-G-H-T. So it's short for the word ritual of passage, which is essentially a ritual or a ceremony or a process that marks a transition from one life stage into another life stage. If we look at our life and imagine it almost like a staircase of transitions and development where, we're a baby, then a toddler, then a child, teenager, young adult. You might see marriage as another step if you choose to do that, children, adulthood, and so on and so forth. And at each of these steps, there's kind of a developmental or social leap. And that leap is for us internally as people and how we see ourselves. So when I'm a child versus a teenager or a young adult, I see myself very differently, right? But critically, my community sees me differently as well. I have typically, as I age, more power and privilege, but also more responsibility to serve my community. And that balance between privileges and responsibility is a really important one. And so what traditional communities have done globally for a very long time is they've marked these key life transitions with ritual or ceremony to basically say to the community and to the initiate or the person who's going through that change, hey, this is an important moment. This is a bit of a fire moment for you. Things are going to heat up, things are going to change, and we're going to bring our elders in and put you through a process that helps you understand what you're accessing and what's expected of you as you grow up, and really mark the moment and celebrate it as well, so that you can look back and go, that was that moment where my community saw me as different to who I was before. And so Rites of Passage Institute, started by Dr. Anna Rubinstein, that is an organization whose mission it is to bring rites of passage back into the mainstream. Because for a large part, we've lost as a society these rites of passage, and instead they're replaced by, I think, that misunderstood version of the term, where it's like, okay, you want to become a young adult, go to schoolies and get drunk and just party and maybe get a tat or end up on the wrong side or wrong neighborhood, whatever it is, and that's seen as some sort of rite of passage when that's what I'd call an unhealthy rite of passage or really just a party. Yeah, that's a starting point at least.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great explanation. And I know I probably decided I was going to have a rite of passage when I was 14 and rode my motorbike up through the bush to my brother's rented property. He lived in an old barn and there
Mm,
was gold top mushrooms all around the place. And first Saturday, I pick them, brew them up, drink it down, nothing happens. The
mm,
next week, I decide manhood didn't occur that last week. It's going to happen this week. And I just really made sure it worked next time. And that 8 hours seemed like 80 years. And it sucked. I've never touched them again since. It scared the heck out of me. And I guess that's probably what I was trying to do. I was trying to move on in my life. And
mm.
yeah, so like you say, unhealthy way yeah, that it just didn't work
And
well.
maybe another word, right, is unheld because you did that yourself. And
Yes,
we're
true.
not
Very
really
true.
supposed to self-initiate. That's what
Yeah.
elders are for. And it's so common, right? I'm curious if you remember, and I know this is your podcast, you're asking me questions, but I'm curious. Do you remember, as that 14-year-old, what was going through your head at the time? Do you remember, what was the motivation? What was your
Um,
kind of,
well, one motivation is it was free because, I'm still in grade 9 at school. Like, I didn't have any money. It just, I always liked to do things that you weren't allowed to do. So I had a motorbike since I was 11. We used to ride in the bush, but the police would come and chase us even in the bush. We'd ride on the road a bit, but we'd always sneak away. We knew how to get away from them quickly through the bush tracks. We'd save up our lunch money, buy a half bottle of rum or something on the weekends. But once I turned 18, and a lot of my listeners were in America, in Australia, you can legally drink at 18. I pretty much like stopped drinking alcohol. Um, the 6 weeks after I got my driver's license, I sold my motorbike and bought a car because I was allowed to do it now. So I guess I was always looking for something I wasn't allowed to do.
mm,
And yeah, that's what was going through my head back then
mm, mm,
but as soon as I was allowed to do it legally, the interest level dropped off sharply. But I had no one to lead me through it. Both of my older brothers were 8 and 12 years older than me. My father had abdicated, you know, anything to do with the children except that he brought the paycheck home every week. Um, so yeah, there was no one to lean on to get help from. Yeah,
mm,
definitely.
mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, fascinating.
yeah.
It is, I think, such a common theme, particularly for boys, where we want to explore the boundary.
Oh yeah.
We
We want to
get
just
out.
get our heads just over the edge of the boundary constantly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the traditional rites of passage they did incorporate as one part of it, the challenge element, where you are given a sense of very real danger sometimes in traditional communities. Now we do it a little bit differently, particularly if we're working with schools. We're not going to get any students to hunt a lion or bungee jump off something, but uh, there is, I think, that recognition that there's this innate desire to meet our edges, exceed them, and even get burnt a little bit in the process to learn not to touch fire. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you originally get involved with rites of passage? Did just
Mm.
stumbled across it or?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey in. I previously worked at a men's mental health organization, preventative mental health organization for teenage boys that kind of gives workshops in schools around topics of healthy masculinity and connection and boundaries and things like that. And I was in senior leadership at that org, and their work was based off the rite of passage framework, and the founders had done the rites of passage training with the institute, and so we were still kind of close as organizations, and we started partnering on this schools project. And to summarize a long story short, about 8 months into that journey or so, um, I just loved the work so much. I thought I was like, I actually think I want to jump across and be on that side of it because I really relate to the rites of passage work specifically and the organization as well.
Guys, if you're on a path of developing your intuition, and I know you are, that's why you're listening here, then the Neurovisor is a tool worth checking out. It uses light and sound to guide your brain into deeper states of awareness, helping you quiet the noise, tap into your inner knowing, and strengthen your intuitive muscle. And who doesn't want that? There's no pills, no fluff, just 11 minutes a day to reset your mind and reconnect with your instincts. I've bought myself one last Christmas and I've added it to my daily practice, and the shifts are real. This is not a paid ad, but if you use the link in the show notes for more information, I do receive a small percentage of the purchase price. I highly recommend you check it out. Interesting. All right. And then so you live in Melbourne and you fly up at whatever intervals you need to up fly into Ballina or Gold Coast Airport or something like that, and then
That's right. Yeah. So the work that's done on the land is the leadership training, which is the training and the structure. It's almost a personal professional development course that's done over there in Northern Rivers or Byron, and also the camps. So we do parent-child camps as well, where we take them through the process and get them to bond and discuss topics like masculinity or what it means to be a man on the father-son camp. That's also done there. But the schools program, which is the main part that I'm responsible for, that's national and starting to become international as well. And so I'll fly to wherever the school is to assist them with that project.
interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And my wife, she works we're not that far from Byron here, and she works at a state government school camp. And they do some sort of rites of passage thing with the older high school children at, most of them are grade fours, grade fives that are in the camp, but
Yeah,
occasionally they'll come through and do something. And she doesn't, she works in the kitchen, she feeds them. So
right.
she just sort of, she's not involved. I don't know, she doesn't know exactly what they do, but they go hiking all day and they get back about 9 o'clock at night. And sometimes she has to go and deliver the meals to where they are, like they're
Yeah,
they're still hiking, and they do it rain, hail, or shine. And
right.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's just been bucketing rain, and the poor old kids are still coming back like drowned rats, and yeah, you
Yeah,
make them do it. So
that's great.
yeah, very, very interesting. And then raising fathers, like that's something you do, an initiative you came up with yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Well, I'd been working in the rites of passage space predominantly with teenagers, and I still think that work's incredibly important. But when I look at sort of where I was, which is, preventative mental health and masculinity work with boys, and then rites of passage training with teens more generally, I just saw this real gap because the rite of passage, yes, the most known about one and visible rite of passage is that child to young adult jump. But there are actually multiple rites of passage across our lives, like that staircase I referenced before. And I'm a father with young kids. I've got two kids, one's 5, one's 2.5. And that means that surrounding me are people who are going through that rite of passage into fatherhood currently, friends, friends of friends, people my age group. And I just witnessed basically a real gap. I saw that people going through that life transition were really struggling and weren't fully embracing how beautiful that change is. And I, on the other hand, firstly, I absolutely struggled through the transition. I think that's part of it. Um, and what I recognized more on reflection than while I was going through it was no one really held me through that transition. Yes, I have my dad and we're close and my brother, but that's two blueprints of fathering that I have to look at. And frankly, it's not enough, and it's not how I choose to parent. I'm quite different to the other men in my family. I'm quite different to some of the men that I might learn about or see in society, and even those men who we see, the famous men who we, applaud and pedestal, are typically applauded and pedestaled for their financial or career or innovations. Um, and it's those very same men who are often, not always, but often the ones who aren't present with their kids. And for me, my values are that children and my family are the most important thing in my life. And as I say that out loud, I think to myself, I imagine most men would nod their head in agreement to that statement. But how many men truly live that out and live in alignment with that value? I think it's a nice thing to say. It's probably another thing to live. And I saw that real gap that as a culture, we're not ushering men through that transition. And actually, in general, as a culture, we don't elevate fathers and we don't raise good fathers as a culture. We actually raise quite often teenage boys in the bodies of men who are then going to raise the same thing in their own sons and eventually daughters as well. So I just saw this real gap and I thought, gosh, this work's so incredible. Could we be doing it with men at that transition? And that's kind of what started that journey for me.
Yeah, yeah, very, very interesting. I know exactly what you mean. My wife and I, we got together when she was 15, I was 16,
Mm,
and at 20 we married. And I think I turned 22 the day before our first son was born. So and she was still 21. But at the time, all our peer group were doing the same thing.
mm,
And we were sort of slightly younger than most of them, but we'd been to half a dozen weddings
wow.
already, by the time we got married, with our close friends. And we then, shortly after getting married, we sort of went on a very, very different journey than our peers, for various reasons. Like I'd been raised up until I was 13, going to church every Sunday with mum because she took me along. Once I hit 13, I started racing motorbikes on Sundays and stuff like that. So she begrudgingly let me go and do that. But at
Mm,
20, when we got married, we decided to go back to church. And it was a very small church, 50 or 60 people, and they had a cassette library. And we didn't have our own building, so we had to set up and pack up, in this community building every week. And so we put our hand up and volunteered to look after the cassette library. So you just rent them out, you get them for free. So you just swap them over. So I had the cassette library and I had a cassette player in my car and I had an hour drive to work every day. And so, bang, I'm just pumping all these cassettes in, learning all about this Christianity stuff. There was a heap of them in there about parenting, Christian parenting. So I just devoured them. And, looking back, some of the stuff we learnt was probably a bit questionable. But in all honesty, 95% of it was probably very good advice from older people who had grown children and what they'd gone through. And so, I mean, the source of all information we get is questionable. Nothing's 100% right. We were deliberately then seeking out how to raise our children in the best way we could. And the fruit of the pudding's in the eating right now. Like our sons are 24, 33, 37, and 39. Three of them are actually, because of the ridiculous rental rates and purchase prices of properties, particularly where I live on the Gold Coast. Um, you know, in recent times, three of our four sons and their partners have moved back to the property, and we've got tiny homes. We've renovated the detached garage, and all sorts of things. And they're living here, and we've got our own little community. We had a guy come the other day, a married guy. He was one of the delivering something, and he's sort of walking around. He goes, "Oh, bro, you got a bit of a community here going, man." And I said, "We do, you know." It's and I'm just saying that to say that we must have done something right for the kids to be happy enough to come back and live with us. And we don't see them all the time or anything like that. They've got their own little spaces. We've got two driveways. One of them actually comes in the other driveway, so we don't even know if they're home or not. But we're all here together. And something else from those Bible days, which I don't go to church and stuff anymore now. But there's a scripture in the Bible that always stood out to me, and it stands out to me huge amount the older I get. And it goes something like, children in one's youth are like arrows in the hand of a warrior. And I'm like, because these four sons we've got, they are so helpful to my wife and I, and so joyous to our hearts to see them all the time, what they're doing, how they're living their lives, what they're doing. It's just like, we did something right. Like
Mm,
these boys, they're just like we feel blessed beyond measure with them. We have two grandchildren now, 7-year-old grandson, 12-year-old granddaughter. And unfortunately for us, at this very moment, they're the only ones who don't live close to us. They're like an hour, hour and a half drive away. But
sure.
yeah, they'll be here for the on the weekend, staying the night and that sort of thing. And but yeah, it's I don't know, none of my peers purposefully went out and searched out how to raise children. They just winged it, I guess. And that's, we do a lot of things in our life. We're just winging it, and it usually goes pretty well. But yeah,
Mm,
it's a very needed thing, I think. The education for all levels of parenting, manhood, growing, etc.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the podcast's about intuition. Um, I'm curious in your life, do you remember moments of intuition or synchronicities as you've gone through, any various stages of your life?
Mm. Yes, multiple, multiple. Hmm. Trying to think of what one feels most resonant to share. To be honest, the one that's coming through right now is was there a minute before, and I love that it's the front book on my bookshelf. You mentioned a quote from scripture that you said was children are like the arrows in a
In the
arrows
hand
in
of a
a
warrior.
hand of a warrior. So one of my favorite quotes on parenting, and I don't know where this is going to take us, and for me, that's part of the path of intuition is following it without knowing where it's going to go. But I felt the pull to share this section before you asked me that question, and I didn't listen to it. And then when you asked me the question, instances of intuition in my life happen to escape my mind, despite knowing that I have many of them. So I'm trusting that for whatever reason, this is the direction to go in, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah.
So this is one of my favorite books. It's The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Uh, do you know much about Khalil Gibran?
No.
So he's a was an American. I should probably just read about him in the introduction somewhere, but he was an American Lebanese man or Lebanese American, I believe in the 1960s or 70s, and
How
he
do you, how do you spell his name?
Khalil, Khalil, and then
No, I don't know.
Gibran, Gibran. And this was first published in 1923, so I'm wrong about the 1970s, probably the century before that. Incredible poet, writer, mystic. And this book's a particularly famous one. Basically, it has a whole range of topics, and there's a master or a wise man in the town, and people come and ask him about the topic, and then he speaks. And each one is 2, 3 pages, very short, and just perfect. So I'll read you the one on children. It's a page and it's a small book. Uh, See where that goes. And it reminds me of the quote you shared. Same metaphor, different usage.
Okay.
Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite. and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable.
Wow, holy fuck. I, I started to almost get a tear in my eye there in the middle of that.
Mm.
That's pretty, he's, yeah, pretty good writer, that dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
special. It's been
Yeah.
my book. I've said if it landed on a desert island and I needed a book that basically became the new Bible or something to run society with, I reckon I'd take that one with me.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I'll have to get you to email me through later, like so I can look that one up and get that one.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
really, yeah. Yeah. Children are like that. Yeah, I love how he says that, like they come through you, but they're not you, or, yeah.
Mm.
Yes, and now I very much, with the age of the boys, well, the age of the men, I very much try to keep my lips sealed as much as I can. I think I'm doing it okay. In my opinion, I'm doing a good job of that, but
Yeah.
to allow them to just live their lives and remember who they are, I mean, learn yeah, they we do have some deeper meaningfuls. Like one of my boys picked me up yesterday, and we had a half-hour drive home, and he'd been listening to a podcast, and he'd sent me the link to it the couple of days before because he loved it. And I said, "Yeah, mate, I've already listened, just finished listening to that one already." And so he's pumping me for all sorts of things and deep and meaningful stuff, and
Mm.
I'm like, he's 24, and it was some pretty serious, questions to me, what I think about this, and and I'm just stoked that he would want to talk to me about
Yeah.
it, um, because I could never ever, well, I say couldn't, but just never did ever have questions or conversations like that with my dad.
Mm.
I dearly wanted to. From the time my dad was in his mid 40s, his hearing was starting to get so bad that it was very, very difficult to have a conversation with him anyway about anything.
Right.
Um, but I know he passed 3 years ago at 92. And, the last couple of years, I really wanted to have serious conversations with him. But, as I had changed and evolved and was starting to work out why was like he was, um, the trauma he'd gone through in his childhood. I'd sort of heard about, but never thought about it. Just it was just something that happened, and as a child, and you know it, but you don't understand it. You don't understand the gravity of what occurred.
Yeah.
And like he was 11 and a half, and probably, I don't know, for Americans, half a mile away down the road, his mum got hit by a car, and the ambulance came. This is in 1941. The ambulance came, picked her up, put her in the back of the ambulance, and the ambulance driver obviously realized the extent to her injuries. And the first thing that ambulance driver did? He drove her to their house so the children could say goodbye to mum. So you imagine playing in the front yard and an ambulance pulls up. You're 11 and a half. And the ambulance driver gets out, opens the back doors, calls the kids down, says, "Come and see your mum." And then that was it. They never, I don't know if she was conscious or what, but they never saw her again. After that, she died. No wonder my dad was so screwed up because his father then went into grief, and all he wanted to do was drink alcohol. And at 12 years old, my father started smoking and drinking beer with his dad. And the whole thing. There was no conversation between him and his father. It was just sit down and drink beer and drown our sorrows.
Mm.
Yeah, so he had a shit start at trying
Mm.
to be a parent.
Yeah, very challenging, especially that, such a young person, what we're seeking is bonding and guidance and wisdom. And, what we have is to bond over grief, essentially. That's really hard. That's really hard. It's beautiful to see you experience that, the
Yeah. And I didn't actually, I never even found that out till his funeral. At his
wow.
funeral, his younger brother was there, who's a really, really nice guy. He was a couple of years younger than Dad.
Mm,
And he told us that story. Like we knew his dad died, got hit by his mum got hit by a car on a bike and she died.
yeah.
But we didn't know about the ambulance bringing
Mm,
her back to the house to say goodbye.
yeah.
It was a small little town then. And, the driver obviously knew who she was, where she lived. And
Yeah. Mm,
yes, and I wonder there's the odd messed up man around this world we live in, particularly the developed world we live in, where we think we're so smart and educated and hold
mm,
our feelings and our emotions and stuff in. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
There really is so much that we go through. It just has such a profound impact on who we become. So profound.
yeah.
It's that, that's why it's so important to me how we as men choose to show up behind closed doors, because that's what our kids are seeing. They're not
Yeah,
seeing us out at work, writing that report, giving that presentation, whatever that is. They see us when we come home tired. They see who we are when the tie and shirt come off or the work clothes come off and we're at home. Who are we there? In my perspective, that's far more impactful on who they'll become than what our paycheck looks like or what sort of accolades we receive from the broader world. I think,
that's right. Like you say, we come home, we take the mask off, and the kids see who we really are.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, my dad used to come home. He'd bring a bottle of, a tall bottle of beer or maybe two of them home, and he'd sit under the house in it. We'd made a little workshop. We'd dug that out under the old Queenslander house up on stumps,
yeah,
and just sit down there and just drink his beer, because
mm,
that's all his father had ever taught him to do. You get home from work, you sit down, you drink beer, and it numbs the pain, the
yeah,
internal, not the physical pain, the emotional pain.
yeah,
Yeah, that's how he was taught to deal with that pain was
mm,
alcohol will dull it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, challenging world. So the work you're doing is I see as extremely valuable and
mm,
very warranted and needed in the world we live in today with and I'm always talking about men and boys and stuff like that. And I know if there's women listening, they'll think, hang on, what about us? We've got, I realize they've got issues too, but I just see for me, it's about helping men. If I want to talk to women about this subject, they're everywhere. Like there's so many women I can talk to about intuition, et cetera, et cetera. But
mm,
guys, I'm purposefully looking all the time. And so I'm constantly finding men
mm,
in all sorts of fields. Like the people I've had on the podcast the last 2 weeks have been radically different to these sort of discussions, but still, they're men who I've potentially helped them realize. Like for you, there's nothing in what I'm going to say to help you realize you've got intuition. You already know that. Whereas these other men, I think I've helped them as I've interviewed them realize, like I can see them sitting there thinking, like they're going, shit, he's
mm,
right. Like I do have intuition. Like, yeah, I have done this, I have done that. And I can see it. I listen to them on their podcasts or that sort of thing. And I'm like, I'm picking it up and I'm thinking they're getting that information intuitively, whether it's a gut feel, just an inner knowing or whatever. And then
mm,
so I'm, ask them, do you want to talk about intuition? And they're like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Why not? And
yeah,
first time they've ever talked about it or thought about it, or synchronicities, and then the,
mm,
the lights are starting to come on. They're like, whoa. So
mm.
yeah,
I
that's
think that's part of I see that as probably, a potential cause for that is as men, we're so early taught to disconnect from our feelings. And intuition is a felt sense. It's a non-rational pathway into truth and experience. And women, on the other hand, are very much told to trust their feelings and encouraged to. And that's part of where their wisdom and their healing comes from. And men have access to it too, Maybe it works slightly differently, but very early on, we're told, don't cry, man up, toughen up. Oh, that doesn't make any sense, mate. What are you doing? And all those tiny statements and experiences effectively get us to say, I shouldn't trust my instincts. I shouldn't trust my intuition. I can't follow my feelings. I can't be vulnerable. I need to go up into my head. And if I go up into my head, I'm safe, I'm rational, I'm methodical, and I can keep myself safe by thinking into the future about all the scenarios and where things could go wrong and choosing the right path based on that. And there's a
Mm.
time and a place for that style of thinking. Risk management and mitigation, being an actuary, crossing the road, use your head. Use your head. Look at how far the car is, estimate how fast they're going, and and don't cross if they're too close. But there are so many areas of life where our intuition is the tool to use and be used by. And if we haven't sharpened it or we don't even know it's in our tool belts, I think that's where we enter the realms that so many of us men, myself included, by the way, experience overthinking, analysis paralysis, and end up just kind of spinning around because the decision's not made through the mind, it's made through the heart and the gut.
Yeah. And I like the analogy used there with it's a tool. And I don't look at it as, my podcast is all about men developing intuition, but I do not for one second think that it's the answer to everything.
Mm,
It's just another tool in your tool belt. And I remember like I did an apprenticeship when I was 15 to 19 as a locksmith. And back then we used screwdrivers. There was no such thing as cordless drill. The first cordless drill had just come onto the market. It was a Makita and it was a piece of rubbish. The battery would go flat in minutes. It was just a joke. And so my old fashioned boss, who'd been raised as a carpenter, he taught me like I developed the muscles in my right arm and my right wrist. I can tell you, like doing screws up, because we used to go and install locks on doors and things like that. And like there was all muscle. There was no. But now, if you looked at, because if you came now and look at the vast range of cordless, like battery operated hand tools around, they make work so much easier. Like if we'd have had access to like a quarter of them back then, we'd have done all our work so much quicker, neater, like and just cost effective. It just would have been so much better. But they're just tools, and wouldn't matter which brand you bought or whatever. Like they would just work. And that's how I look at intuition. It's just another tool on your tool belt. And if you're a carpenter or something like that, you're just going to get the job done more efficiently, quicker, neat and tidy. Everyone will be happier. You'll probably make less mess. You'll be bothering the customer for a lot less time. You get in, get the job done, get out and go, and away you go. And that's how intuition is. It just makes our life easier, quicker, faster, do a better job more often. And yeah, it's very, very worthwhile, in my opinion, developing it, tapping in and following it rather than just particularly if you're a tradie listening and you're out there, take all your electrical tools away and go back to all your hand tools. And that's what it's like, the difference going from following your intuition to back to half brain dead, like not having numbing your brain with alcohol every day, just not tapping into and feeling and taking advantage of, in my opinion, invisible benevolent forces out there who are constantly trying to feed us information for our benefit to help us. So yeah, and same as synchronicities, things occur like different things. You're like, wow, that's something trying to send me a message here. It's not like I've got this little gut feel. It's something external to me is like happening. And
yeah.
I absolutely love those. If you want to go back to normal basics of like the paycheck, I've made ridiculous amounts of money through following synchronicities, like just off the charts, like money I could never attempted to make. It just occurred because I followed synchronicities, but very challenging ones, not just simple, easy ones. Like I was a neck on the block big time by following it, but the reward was manyfold in many areas, and one of those areas happened to be financial, which was nice. But other areas too that have really brought a lot more comfort and knowing of who you are as a person and understanding that there really are benevolent forces there and they really do want to help us. Yeah, I find synchronicity is just exciting to
Yeah.
when they occur. You're like, oh, okay, this is going to be good. What's going to happen here? Yeah.
Yeah. I find they're a signal that I'm on the right path. Like I had one very recently. I visited a kind of author mentor out in Byron, and she said, "I want you to meet my ex-husband. I think you guys will get along well." So I went to his property on a big piece of land, and I get there and I just see on the table is a stack of 4 books. And he turns out he told me later he'd pulled them aside to show me because he felt for whatever reason that I'd connect with those books. And on the very top of that stack was a book called Nature. What is it? Nature and the Human Spirit. I've since bought it. Nature and the Human Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I just said hi to him, shook his hand, and saw this book sitting on top of the stack. And I went, oh, Bill Plotkin. He's been coming up a lot lately. And I'd had Bill Plotkin, the author, come up, I reckon, 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Hadn't read a single word of his work, barely knew about him. And I'd had a friend 2 days before, uh, I'd said to him, hey, Bill Plotkin came up again. I texted him, I said, where should I start? I have a sense that I'm being called to read his work. And he said, most people, I would say to start with Soulcraft. That's kind of the seminal one. But for you, I think you'll really relate to Nature and the Human Soul. And so I get there right after receiving that text a day before, and what's on top of the book stack? Nature and the Human Soul. And I just was like, all right, got it.
I get it.
I got to read the book.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
little moments like that, again, they just demonstrate that we're in the stream and we're in the right spot. That's what I internalize in those moments. And to listen, to choose to listen, a few minutes after that, we'd been walking and the man I met took me to a special spot on his property and said, I want to show you a really special rock that I've found that I have a relationship with that I really love this rock. It's about, maybe the size of a baseball, a bit bigger than that. And it's nestled in a nook of a tree that he likes. And so it kind of just sits there beautifully. And I was like, oh, I want to touch it. And then I was about, like, I didn't even reach out my arm yet, but I was about to reach out my arm. And I got this strong intuition that just, it wasn't in words, but the feeling was, don't touch the rock. You have to ask. And I was like, okay. And I didn't touch it. And we just kept the conversation going. And eventually he pulled out the rock from the tree and showed it to me. And he said, this is my guardian on the back because, the rock's nestled in the tree. So half of the rock's facing us, half of it's against the tree. And he pulls it out, and the bit that's against the tree has a massive spider on the other side, living spider that's the same diameter as the rock, covers the whole backside of the rock. So this is its guardian. I asked it to take care of the rock for me and just gives it a little drink in the river and puts it back in the tree. I said, wait, so that thing's alive? He's like, yeah, it's taking care of the rock. And I just thought to myself in that moment, I'm so glad I trusted my intuition to not pick up that rock because that would have been an embarrassing and potentially dangerous start to that friendship.
Yeah.
So
You could have thrown the rock. Ah.
imagine a sacred rock, pick it up. Oh, yeah, there's a spider, and just complete mess. So I'm
And you
just,
could have killed the spider and thrown the rock.
that's right.
It's my
Yeah, and then
friends.
killed the friendship in the process.
There was something you were saying there earlier, just before you got into the rock story. I thought, oh,
I
anyway,
just about
it's gone.
listening, and Bill Plotkin's book being on top of the stack.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And so when I know, I often think back in my life where, like, a moment like that, like, let's project you forward 2 years now. You've read this book and you've read one or two others of his books, and how, because there's certain books in life that change us a lot more than other books. And if I look back 5 years to say some experience I had, and I think, yeah, prior to that, event of me stumbling across and being introduced to this person through a video or a book or whatever, my life was going fine, I thought. And now I've read that book, it's like, oh wow, how differently I think. And it's like how pivotal that moment was where I started reading that book and I've got that book and now and then, a year later I've read it again and you think, I am such a different person than I was before that. And I think quite
Mm,
differently now. Just yeah, they're very important moments in our lives to help us really remember who we are and why we're here and where we came from and where we're headed. Yeah,
mm,
yes, yeah, very, very interesting. So yeah, I just love talking to people who, like yourself, who understand about synchronicities and intuition and
mm,
the benefits and of that to us. And for me, I just would love the idea of men making one better decision every day because they allowed their intuition to guide them, lead them into something. And like the other day, you probably made a better decision not grabbing that rock. That whole thing probably worked out better.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
Absolutely.
probably still friends with that guy now, rather than if you'd have thrown his rock and
Right.
killed the spider.
That's right. Uh, I
Yeah.
think he would have understood either way. But yes, I'm glad I didn't touch his rock or spider.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, very good. All right. I'll have your contact details and things like that in the show notes. Is there anything we haven't talked about you'd like to mention before we go?
No, nothing's coming to mind. Thank you for
No.
having me. Yeah, great to chat.
All right. And so I encourage men to go into the show notes and have a look at the Rites of Passage Institute up here it's in the northern New South Wales, isn't it? Like around the Byron Bay area. And also to Raising Fathers there, have a look. And if you're a new father or thinking you might become a father in the next year or two or three, I'm not sure. Like what sort of stage would
Time
men
to
need to be there in that, a
Mm.
couple of years out or their wife's already pregnant or
Look, they can engage whenever they want to, but where I'll start purposefully working with men is when they're on the conception journey. So when they say, hey, we're starting to actively try or explore it, that's when we can really start working together, up until the whole way through pregnancy, beyond pregnancy, early fatherhood, all of it's
yeah.
there.
Excellent, excellent. And then rites of passage, that's sort of if there's men listening with children to try
So
and
there's a few ways into that. We run camps for parents and their kids, starting at about age 11. In fact, even a little bit earlier, where you can come on a camp with your child, and it's any configuration of sex and gender. So it can be dad, daughter, dad, son, mother, daughter, whatever combo you want, but one parent or mentor or parent figure and the child, that's the relevant age group, all the way up until about age 17. There are different camps for different aged kids, of course.
yeah,
And really they run for a few days and a few nights, depending on the camp. As they get older, there's our kind of flagship camp is the Making of Men camp, which is for boys aged 14 to 17 and their male mentor or father, where we take them through the rite of passage process and essentially help initiate them into manhood and help them discover what sort of man they want to be as they grow up, which just asking the question itself does so much for a young person. Um, so that's certainly a way in. If your child's at school and school age, you can contact me and we can work with the school and have the school run these sorts of processes. And also for men, regardless of whether they have kids, they can come on our leadership training and experience the work and learn the framework as well.
yeah, because I probably only live 45-minute drive away. And I've had a look at it recently and I'm thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind heading along there for
Mate,
myself.
you should. There's one in a couple of weeks. There's one next Friday. There's a leadership training. I'll be up there for it. So,
I think that what like when I looked at that one a couple of weeks ago, I think it was booked out. And
okay.
then there's another one July-ish or in
Yeah.
another couple of months or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, good.
Yeah. So you help facilitate those, do you?
I'll be assisting on this one. Yeah,
Okay.
assisting
All
on
right.
this one. Anna normally runs them, but
Yeah.
he'll have a few of us helping out and kind of holding the space as well. So I'll be there
Yeah.
for this one.
Yeah. And I'd love to get to one of those. And it'd be great to meet you in person too. Be
You
really
too.
good.
You
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I'll set that goal that I'll get along to one of those. And it's
Great.
actually camping. You just have the swag and you're camping in tents or outside or
Yeah, yeah, you either yeah, exactly. There's a kind of big group tent for the men if they want it, or just individual tents or swags. You can bring your own. You can use ones we set up for you. Doesn't matter.
right. Okay. Excellent. Sounds really good. All right.
Beautiful.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Doug.
Thoroughly
Yeah,
enjoyed it. Yeah.
lovely to meet you again.
Yeah. Excellent.
All
Thank you,
right.
Jason.
Cheers. Bye.
Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.